Hello and welcome to the video. I'm Jimmy the Mower and today we're going to be showing you how to remove the cutting units from a Ransomes Parkway 3. Okay then, so to remove the cutting heads, it can seem quite daunting, but it's a fairly simple task. We just need to do it safely and in a methodical manner. Now, the first thing we do is go around and spray all the nuts and bolts up with some release spray. This will penetrate down into the little gaps and hopefully release the rust in there and make it easier to remove the nuts and bolts. Over the season, these are dragged through grass, mud, everything, you name it, it's all in there, and they do get dirty and grimy, as you can see. It's been a tough season, we've just finished mowing, and they need to be stripped down and redone. So the spray is always a good starting point. Now, after we've sprayed everything up and that's had time to settle in, we need to take the reel motors off first. The motors sit at the side of the cutting head and they drive the cylinder round. Now, to remove those is quite simple. It's just two nuts on each one. So it's just two 13mm nuts. However, they are quite tucked away. You can't get a socket in there, so it has to be a spanner. So instead of nylock nuts, we use just standard nuts with a spring washer in there or a compression washer, which will hold them in tight. So that's what the 13mm for. Now, once you've taken the motor off, you need to protect the splines on there. I'll show you how to do that later on. Then we need to take the cutting head actually off the mower. We do this by removing it from the bar that it sits on. There's a bar on the front. Now, it's a 17mm on there. We use a socket or a spanner, whichever we can get on there with. There's no nuts on there. The holes are tapped, so we just take that out and undo it. Now, if you're having a quick regrind and somebody's coming to pick them up, they regrind them in the head, you can probably slide them off and leave the bars on the machine. However, if it's the end of season, you'd like to take the bars off, make sure they're all running true and straight, and if they are, that's great. If not, they need to be repaired or replaced. So we're trying to take the whole unit off together so we can look at everything and make sure it's exactly as it should be. Now, I'll get down on the floor and I'll take off the cutting head number 1. We call that number 1 under there because that's number 1 for problems, right? You're walking round, you have this one out the front and this one out the front. You can always see. We can see on here we've got something missing. We've got a rubber bit missing off the top. We can see that. We can see if we've got any problems with the blades or the cylinders. We can see everything on there because they're here right in front of us. However, number 1 sits down underneath. And you have to get down on your hands and knees and inspect it. And very often it's overlooked. So we call that number 1 because it's the most important one. So that sits under there. The motor sits on the right-hand side of that and drives it from the right. Now, we move over to cutting head number 2. Now, this is called number 2. It's the second one. It's also driven with a right-hand motor. So we've got 2 of those driving it from the right-hand side. So number 1 and number 2. And then we move over here. Last but not least, number 3. This is just 1, 2, and this is the third one. It's the only left-hand drive one that we have. So when we strip them down and all these little bits come off, or whoever strips them down for you, they label it up as number 3 and they know that everything goes back on number 3. Same as number 2 and number 1. And you'll always get back 2 right hands and 1 left hand. And it's as easy as that. Right, let's get down on the floor and take off number 1. So this here is the centre cutting head motor, and the little nuts that we need to undo are this side, one just there and one just over on there. Now, we sprayed them all with penetrating oil as we have all the nuts and bolts around the mower. So I should just be able to get my 13 on there and turn it. Might take a bit to get going. That's it. That should do, and hopefully, might need a couple more turns. Once it got it moving, it should just spin off. So I'll just do this side, and then I'll just undo this side. Okay, so the nuts and bolts are out. They're there in my hand. Well, nuts anyway, and the washers, compression washers or spring washers and normal washers, just hold everything in place. Put those to one side. We just normally get rid of those and put new ones on. And then with the motor, we just have to give it a bit of a wiggle. And it should come out. There you go. That's that. All right. Okay. Now, I can't turn it all the way around because the pipes are tied up. But you might be able to see the splines on there and the grease. What we do now is we get a plastic sandwich bag and some an elastic band and we put it over there, and that's just to protect those splines and protect the bit of grease that's on there so we don't get all dirt and debris in. Now, there is a thin rubber seal around these motors, so when we come back to replacing the cutting heads, we can have a look at this seal, make sure it's good, clean it up, and then if it needs replacing, we'll do that. If not, then we'll be good to go. I'll just put the sandwich bag on now. So we're still working on cutter head number 1. That's the underbelly cutter. We took the motor off from the other side, which was pretty simple to do. Now this bit's a little bit tricky. We need the actual cutting head down on the floor as low as it can go. And then we need to get underneath there and undo 4 17mm bolts. I've got the socket ready in my hand. I've got a long socket on because it's a little bit tricky to get in there. We put some penetrating oil in from the other side, so that goes down into the grooves, into the thread of the actual bolts themselves, so it should make it easier to release for us. So I'll put a photo up of those 4 so you can see them clearly. There's no way of filming under there. I'll just have to duck under now, undo them, we'll drop that out, and once it's clear we can pull it out with the bar and all, and we'll see the finished cutting head here on the floor. Okay then, that's the 4 bolts undone and the cutting unit out. So it's quite a simple task, 2 nuts and some washers on the motor side and 4 bolts, and pull this out on this side. So it's not as hard as it looks. It's just make sure you do it safely because these are very, very heavy. Now these 4 bolts you undid, these are the 17mm. They're clamped to an arm that sits under there, and that comes away like so. It's got a nice little groove cut in the middle, and that sits around the bar and allows it to pivot. Now we've got a flat washer on the front there, and a bolt that goes through. If we ever need to just remove this quickly from the rest of the mower, we can undo this, slightly undo those bolts just so it's loose, and we can slide this out and we can leave the rest of the assembly there. And there is, if I move this out so you can see it a bit better, there is a little piece on here as well. Now they take an Allen key. Now if you want to leave everything on the mower apart from the head itself, you can take this off and leave the bar on. We can undo that there and we can pull that out. The bar will slide straight off and it will work. We've got to be mindful though when we're changing these bars, when we're doing things, we need to put grease in. You see we've got grease on the bars in here. There's not a lot, but not at this end anyway. We've got little rubber seals in there, so these little rubber seals have to be intact, but we'll cover that when we're doing the actual strip down of the cutting heads themselves. So that's number 1 undone. Now we'll get round to number 2 and we'll undo that one. So we've done cutter head number 1 then, that was the hardest one of the lot. We're on to number 2 now. As you can see, the 4 bolts in there that hold it up, we've sprayed them up already with some release spray, and they hold it onto the arm. They're clearly visible. We can use an impact wrench to get those off, or an impact driver depending on what you've got available. So they'll come off there, and then the motor's tucked in behind here. Now the motor tucked in behind there, it's exactly the same principle as before. It's just basically 2 nuts with a couple of washers behind. We undo that with a 13mm, slide it out and put a sandwich bag on to protect it. I'll undo this and we'll see if we can turn it round, and then we'll get the motor off. You see how easy this is now, I hope. Okay, that's off. Simple as that. We'll put that up out the way. We put these back on, these plates. We just put them back on there, and then we know that the plates are all matched up to the arms that they came off. Now, I have a bit of a shufty round. I should literally pull this and away it comes. There you go. As easy as that. As easy as that. That's it. Now, this in here is greased all the way through, and again, we can undo this on the back and pull it out that way, or we can drag it through this way, depending on which one you want to do. we're going to leave this bar on for when we take all the cutting heads apart, and we'll check the bar and the seals then. Right, I'll turn this round and get the motor on, and then we'll move on to number 3. Well, that's the motor off. That was nice and easy. There's the nuts and the washers. Now we just chuck those in the spares bin, and we put new ones on when we reassemble it. Now the food bag goes over here. These are the splines. There's some quite fine splines on there, and they drive the actual cutting cylinder. So to protect those, the grease that's on them, and also to stop any contaminants getting in, we put a sandwich bag over the top and just literally elastic banded on. Okay, you just put that on and just keep going and going until it's tight and it holds on. When we pressure washer it off, that's fine. We can pressure washer off all the motor. It's a sealed unit. You can wash this off. You can wash the splines off as well. All the grit and bits will come off. And then round here we've just got that rubber seal that fits on again, and this is the one that we need to check before we reinstall the motor. So everything gets cleaned at a later date. The cutting heads, they'll go off. We'll pressure washer all those before we strip them down as well. So that's that one done. That's cutting head number 2 done. We can move that out of the way now, and we just get on to cutting head number 3, and we just do exactly the same with that, and then it's a job done for today. Well, that was straightforward enough. So now we're on to cutting head number 3, and again, this is an easy one. The 417 mils out of there, as you can see, they've been sprayed up already, so they're all greased and ready to come out, and then it's just the motor off the back, just those 2 13mm ones. So we'll just whip this off, and then we'll get it through and do it one-handed. It's so simple. And there we go, as simple as that. Again, we've got it off, that's that done. We'll put this back on once we've moved the cutting head out the way, and we've done it. And really, we should just give it a tug. It's fallen out of the arm itself, look. So it's there and done, that's it. Let's move the bar around. Yeah, I think that one's bent a little bit as well, like the other one. So we'll have to look at that when we're stripping the cutting heads down themselves and see if we can straighten it out, or we'll get a new one. Right, but that's it. I'll take this wheel motor up and we'll bag that up as well. So that's the last motor, all bagged up then, nice and safe and sound. All the cutting heads removed, it's all done. We can just wheel them round, put them onto a pallet, and they're ready to go away and be refurbished. Unless you're doing them yourself, of course, and then you need to get them somewhere, pressure wash them all off, and then bring them back into the workshop, and we can strip them all down. But that's a whole different video. Make sure you give me the thumbs up and subscribe. Hit the notification bell as well if you can, please, and you'll get notified each and every time I release a new video. All the links to myself, my website, the social media stuff is all in the description below. If you've got anything nice to say, you can pop that in the comments section too. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Jimmy the Mower. I'll catch you on the next one.